So now, having examined the genetic basis of race and ethnicity, we ask the question of how two seemingly unrelated worlds of science and literature are connected. This may help us understand how we as humans see our identities.
Okay, so for Monday you need to have your final projects ready to go. Does anyone have questions about that? No? Alright, have a good weekend.
How are we supposed to connect literature and science? The two are completely opposite. Science deals with the facts, and literature, well, I don't know.
I know, but through all the readings as well as the labs and biology discussions we've had, I feel like the two are more closely connected than we think.
Yeah, maybe they are. Let's walk to the library and discuss this some more. We can even get ABP when we're done.
Yeah, I love bagels! Look at all these books, Darwin. They are full of stories that help us understand who we are now and where we came from.
Came from? Oh, I can tell you that. Do you recall my book, The Origin of Species? It introduced the theory of evolution through natural selection over the course of generations. It also presented the idea that diverse life came about through a branching pattern of evolution in organisms that shared common ancestors.
Oh, of course! But I'm confused about how this relates to humans. Why doesn't evolution just make us superhumans with unstoppable powers?
Well, as cool as that would be, evolution is not goal-oriented. We evolve by random mutations, and if they happen to be beneficial, then organisms with these mutations go on to survive and reproduce more frequently.
Wow, that's really cool! How did you figure all of this out?
It was quite a journey. I was aboard the HMS Beagle as a naturalist, surveying different forms of life. It was when we got to the Galapagos Islands that I was able to witness the true diversity and variation within organisms.
Where are we? This isn't Radford.
No, it's definitely not Radford. We're aboard the Beagle. This is where all of my work with evolution began. Like I was saying earlier, by studying the animals here, I was able to understand that organisms with genetic mutations and variation went on to survive and reproduce through natural selection. This was especially easy for me to observe in the finches on these islands. Despite not paying much attention to the birds at first, I now use them as a prime example of variation within species. The finches are all the same species, but have different beaks, which are highly adapted to their food sources.
So, by understanding our biological origins, we are better able to understand ourselves.
Exactly! Take a look at this chart. It's called a phylogenetic tree, and it illustrates the connections between organisms and their ancestors as well as the homogeneous characteristics.
I really like the way of examining identity from a biological standpoint, but I feel like we are forgetting some of the most important parts of our origin.
Like?
Well, do you remember reading Paradise Lost and how Renee was explaining how origin helps us understand where we've come from and how this may influence who we are?
Whoa! We're going in!
Wow, I wonder why this keeps happening.
I don't know, but I think we may have bigger problems. Is that Lucifer?
I overheard your conversation about origin and thought I'd offer some insight. You see, I am originally from heaven, but I was cast out by God when I got a little carried away on a power trip. My origin has a confusing meaning for me, because I was created in a holy place, but now I'm the leader of hell, and the goal of my existence is to spread sin throughout mankind.
Wow!
Exactly, and I've done a good job of it. God thought Adam and Eve were his perfect little creations, and I convinced them to eat from the tree of life. It was me who inspired original sin within humans. Because of that, you both have origins of sinner. In fact, my daughter is sin herself.
I'm not convinced that original sin is a good definition of who we are. I mean, there are so many other components to mankind. Let's just take a look inside of ourselves. I mean, have we forgotten about internal components like gender and race?
Well, I don't know much about DNA, but anyway, I hope that helped your discussion.
That guy was kind of angry.
You would be too if you got kicked out of heaven.
Now you've got me thinking about the internal factors that influence our identity. I mean, I remember learning about the social ramifications of race, but how has this shaped who we are? Where are we?
It looks like Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. I think we are in the scene where Marlowe has finally found Kurtz. You see, they are in Africa, and Kurtz has really bonded with the natives. Marlowe is trying to bring him back to civilization in attempts to obey the primitive laws of race and society. I can't believe we are here. This is one of my favorite novels.
Why did you come here? This is the true heart of darkness. I have learned how race helps from our identity here. Not only physical aspects which clearly separate us, but also socially. Kurtz is frowned upon for socializing with natives. I myself have undergone a change. At first I called these people ants, and didn't even consider them human. But then I met the helmsman, and have begun to realize that race isn't the only aspect of our identity.
He's right. We can't forget about gender.
Can I at least explain the biological aspect of race before you suck us into some other weird book?
Alright.
Okay, so race is determined long before we are born. When we are developing, we receive genetic material from both our parents. 23 chromosomes from our mothers and 23 from our fathers. These chromosomes are formed from DNA, which is simply genetic material contained in the nucleus of our cells. This expression of our genes is often called a phenotype, and may have possible environmental interactions as well.
Wow, I never realized that before. You mean all of that is inside of us?
Yes! Bob told me that if you stretch out the DNA strands in each of our cells, it would be about 3 meters long and fill up over 1 million pages in any average book.
That's amazing. But what about gender?
Well, people often misconstrue ideas about sex and gender. Gender refers to whether a person feels male or female, and sex refers to the physical expression correlated with gender. Whether you are born male or female depends on the chromosome that the father contributes. If it is the Y chromosome, then the child will be male, and if the X chromosome is contributed, then the child will be female. After we are genetically assigned a certain sex, the rest of our identity develops from gender.
Oh, that's really cool. I always thought of sex and gender as the same thing. Well, how do environmental factors play into gender determination?
Well, heritability is an estimate of how much of the variation of individuals is genetic and how much is environmental. This is often discussed as nature versus nurture. The way we are raised as children may affect how we perceive our gender when we are adults. Furthermore, if a child is born with an unidentified gender at birth, the parents may often have to choose what gender they will raise them as.
Yeah, but I wonder just how important gender really is. Throughout my novel, my gender is undefined, and this influences the reader to do away with any stereotypes and assumptions they may have about gender.
What do you mean? This is amazing! Where are we?
Only in one of the best plays ever written. This is A Twelfth Night by William Shakespeare. Look, Viola!
Who are you? I need some privacy. Greetings. My name is Charles Darwin, and this is my friend, narrator.
Is it okay if we ask you a few questions about your identity concerning gender?
My identity? I lost my identity as soon as I started dressing as Cesario. Throughout this entire play, I didn't know who I was. Outwardly one, inwardly another. It's terrible. And at the end of the play, when I finally confess my true self, I don't even get any more lines. Olivia still speaks. The Duke talks some more, but I just sit there. Society outcast me for having more than one identity. Though if you will excuse me, I have to change attire.